Am I live? I'm good. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second episode of 20-something Live. We have guests, all entrepreneurs as always, who will be joining us today. My friend Senthil from over at Dancing Astronaut, my friend Adéllyn, who is the head of electronic initiatives over at Clear Channel, and stay tuned for my friend Tom, who I promise you will have one of the most inspiring stories you will ever hear in your entire life. I want to do something that I forgot to do at the end of last week's episode, which was thank my entire team here at Third Brain for making this happen for me. Greg, Wade, Tiffany, Danielle, and of course my boy Nathan for bringing this to you guys and making it possible for me to do this and give back. So we're going to start off with our first guest. He has given a voice to the editorial side of dance music and been a leader in the genre through the very beginning of its rise up until where it's at today, and continues to innovate. With their new website layout, they have continued to bring you the biggest and best news in dance music and be the most trusted voice in the business. I now welcome my good friend, the CEO of Dancing Astronaut, Senthil. How are you, buddy? I can't hear him. Senthil, are you muted? There we go. I think I saw a mute button go on and off there for a second. Sorry about this, guys. Hello? I still don't have him, guys. One second, everybody. I'm so sorry about this.
Let's cue in a video. I don't know why this isn't working.
Okay, cool. All right, everybody. Hello. I think I'm still live and good. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties with Senthil, so we're just going to fast forward right on into our second guest and bring in Senthil in a minute. This woman, who is a young 20-something, has quickly become one of the most dominant power players when it comes to radio in electronic dance music. She is known for taking some of the best dance records and crossing them over into the mainstream, and of course for always having one of the best ears in the game. I'd like to welcome in my good friend, and as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the head of electronic initiatives for Clear Channel, Adéllyn Polomski.
Hey, Jake.
Hi, Adéllyn. No trouble hearing you.
All clear.
That's the difference between Senthil being down in the busy South by and you being out in New York.
I guess so, man. At least we got that Wi-Fi on for now. And
How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man.
Yeah? What's going on?
Well, just out here on the grind. It's crazy. Clear Channel is a very different company to what it used to be, and it's an exciting time because it went from being just a radio company to 2 years ago changing its name and all the philosophies to becoming a real entertainment company and platform. So it's essentially like a startup in many ways, working from the ground up after having such a classic foundation for so long.
I think Clear Channel is one of those household names that everybody knows, everybody's heard of the company. But as you mentioned just now, it's taken different shape in the last couple months and even the last year. But I'm not sure that everybody that's tuning in knows exactly who Clear Channel is, what the history is, and what they do today.
So Clear Channel has always owned the largest amount of terrestrial radio stations in the United States. I think it's something like 850. And those range from top 40 stations to country music stations, hip-hop stations, and news, talk, sports. So it's this huge network from coast to coast. And then within Clear Channel, there are lots of different smaller subsections. So there's a syndication arm, which is called Premier Networks. So that's how come you can hear Ryan Seacrest in Missouri, even though he records the show in Los Angeles. Our biggest initiative is a platform called iHeartRadio, which is the digital arm of Clear Channel, which a lot of people know from our live events, especially the iHeartRadio Music Festival in Las Vegas. And it started as a free app on your phone to listen to the 850 radio stations, and then evolved to create custom stations, and there's some, like, if you like a certain artist like Drake or Cruella, and you can create your own Cruella radio station with that feature as well, and it's all free, and it's just a really great platform to connect artists with their fans without a barrier to entry.
Did you mention Cruella because they have the most people requesting their channel?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very cool. So anyway, talk to us about what your role is within that monstrosity of a company.
So my role, I wear many hats, like a lot of us do. Within Clear Channel, my responsibilities range, so director of EDM initiatives for the company, so that serves as I created and completely program our network called Evolution. And Evolution is the 360 brand for dance music for Clear Channel. So that's live events that we do. It's the radio station itself on iHeartRadio, the two syndicated shows we do with Pete Tong and Diplo, as well as 2 terrestrial stations in Boston and in Miami. So my job is to choose the music that gets played there, as well as work with DJs to create specialty radio shows and content and features. And that's one part. The other part that I do for Clear Channel nationally is I serve as a conduit between our world of dance music and Clear Channel, whether or not that's booking an artist for the iHeartRadio Music Festival or for one of our iHeartRadio theater performances, clearing music to use in syncs and promotions, as well as if there are artists who really want to take that step, and to really reach a new audience. For a lot of these artists who have really hit a ceiling within one platform, within one genre, and they feel like they want to reach a new audience, we work with them to help break them to a completely new audience. Someone on Z100 probably didn't know Armin van Buuren or Cruella or Calvin Harris up until a few years ago, and it's been really, that's the best part of my job.
I'm glad you mentioned those names, because I think that 20-something is all about, obviously, success stories at a young age, and a lot of people tune in so they can find out how people that are their very same age are doing something really amazing. Talk to us. I mean, Cruella is obviously one of them, but let's give another example specifically about Clear Channel's role in maybe breaking one of those artists.
The first one that I worked on was Calvin Harris, and it's funny because in a lot of ways, me working with that record to break also broke me within Clear Channel. I remember I lived in the UK for 5 years before coming to Clear Channel, and I was really familiar with Calvin Harris and really familiar with Feels So Close. And we have these music summits where we hear lots of new and exciting music, and I was the only one in the room who had heard of him, and I said, this song is huge, and it was already overperforming at dance music, and I said, I think this is something really special that we have an opportunity here to break Calvin Harris, and we put him into a program that we have called the Artist Integration Program, and it's essentially the artist talking about how they made their song and what that song means to them, tagged onto the actual song that gets pushed out over that song we did to our top 40 stations, so Z100, Kiss FM in Los Angeles, Y100 in Miami, and so people not only get to hear a new song, they get to hear the artists talking about what really inspired them, and that is the best part of my job. That's the most fun, getting to work with my heroes and the people who inspire me to help really make their dreams come true.
So once Clear Channel takes a song into the mainstream, everybody tuned in has obviously heard it at that point. And when you have everybody in the world listening, sometimes you could effectively, in certain instances, lose your credibility. So
right.
What do you think is the best advice to artists that do reach that pinnacle to stay credible, and how have you seen it affect artists' credibility once they get to that mainstream level?
I think it's really important to start where you come from with every single record and every single thing about what you do as an artist, because if you don't have that core fan base who believed in you from the beginning, and if you alienate them, you really are losing a core part of what's special about being an artist. So making sure that, yes, you love your original fan base and you're super excited about the new ones, but always make sure to still connect with your fans and to give them things, whether or not it's a free track or, you know, the first look at a new video, or, you know, even something as simple as really engaging with them on social media. Those little things that you can do, no matter how big you are. You know, often what I see is it's the biggest artists who are the most connected with their fans and who really make an effort to not to lose out or diva out. Like, they really understand the value of that, because if it all went away tomorrow and you lost not only the new audience but your foundation, then, you know, it's a very lonely place.
Cool. So I want to get into your story in a minute, Adéllyn, but I'm sure there's another question that the audience is dying to know, which is, you mentioned the artist integration program, but what is the process for a song to start bubbling up online and then eventually make its way onto Clear Channel's radar and then eventually onto the radio?
You know, I can't really speak to the other genres. I really can only speak to how it works within my world.
Electronic, of course.
Right. So typically what we do is we obviously listen to a lot of this music. You can't really half-ass this and, you know, kind of just read a chart or like think what other people think is cool. Like, you have to really be engaged, and I'm constantly listening to music and I'm sharing it with my friends. Pete Tong and I send each other music all the time. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And once we kind of identify those songs that we think are really big, we put them into the fold. We'll start them off on Pete's show, and then we'll gradually put them into rotation if they're continuing to build as we want them to. And the really great songs do, because after a certain point, you can only give them so much platform. If the song is a hit and the song is really going to resonate, it's going to go far. The issue sometimes I have with dance music is a lot of these tracks aren't made for the radio. I get asked that a lot, like, when am I going to hear, you know, this 10-minute, you know, Dubfire song on Z100? I'm like, you're not, you know. So it's being, because a lot of these tracks are also made to be mixed in festival sets, and it's you know, kind of being cognitive of where this track is destined to go. And once it has overperformed for us on Evolution, you know, then we'll start to engage. I mean, I'm always talking with the top 40 guys, you know, and all the other format radio programmers. You know, I'm like, this should be on your radar, because give it a couple of months. Like, I think this record's really gonna be something special for you. You know, but it has to stand on its own once, you know, you give it that love and you know, push.
Of course. And you mentioned Pete, which is cool. Pete is your partner in Evolution, and I want to get to that in a second. For those that don't know, Evolution is currently a terrestrial radio station in both Boston and Miami, and it's quickly expanding, obviously, through Daylen. It's one of the most popular channels on iHeartRadio, which kind of is a testament to the electronic dance music genre and how popular it can be within a new age app like the iHeartRadio app. So, Adéllyn, what was the process like in partnering with Pete? I'm sure a lot of people know him from BBC, but he's also a part of this Clear Channel success story. So, what is the partnership with Pete, and how did it come about, and what was your involvement in it?
I first met Pete when I was still working at Premier Radio Networks, because he had a desire to syndicate his BBC shows in the United States, and that's what Premier's job largely is. Shortly after meeting him, we had begun the process of developing Evolution. There was about a 6-month, you know, research and, you know, all balls to the wall testing for it. And, you know, I said, first of all, meeting him after living in the UK for 5 years, listening to his show every Friday night while I was cooking dinner before I was going to go out, was totally mind, you know, I'm like, and so we kind of said, we're working on this thing that we think is going to be really special. We'd love for you to be involved. And he started off with us on iHeartRadio when we launched Evolution. We did like a 2-week of Pete takeovers. We got exclusive guest mixes from some artists that are huge now. We were one of the first people to put a Disclosure mix on the radio. And this is way before they, you know, were even, I don't even think Latch was really kind of popping off at that point even. And then eventually we turned on Boston, and so Pete not only does his 2-hour show from 7 till 9 Eastern on Evolution, but he also does an additional 2 hours locally in Boston, voice tracking. So what that means is you'll hear him talking in between the song rotation tracks, and it always cracks me up to hear him talking about Red Sox games and, you know, stuff like that, which I think is awesome. And he also does that in Miami as well. And then we have him with our syndicated show that we made. We didn't end up syndicating his BBC show. We ended up creating a completely new Evolution show to syndicate with Pete. So he works most jobs for me. That's why he had to move to LA.
Were you the initial touch point with Pete from Clear Channel's angle?
Yeah, well, it came in through Premiere Networks, and so my boss at the time didn't know about dance music, but she read the emails and said, "Oh, Daylen, do you know this guy, Pete Tong?" I was like, yes. And so that's how that happened.
Amazing. And so I'm sure with being a big corporate company like Clear Channel, a lot of stuff, sometimes with any corporate company, I don't want to single out Clear Channel, a lot of things can be inside the box. Obviously, you guys are a very innovative company, but you specifically at Daylen have a tendency to think outside the box and be sort of a rebel in your own right. You mentioned going to the UK for 5 years. We'd love to hear about, you know, where you went to college and how you kind of transitioned into becoming one of the most powerful people when it comes to terrestrial radio for electronic dance music in the United States.
Wow, it's a...
And by the way, just so everyone knows, I know you're never supposed to ask a woman this, but can you tell the audience, please, how old you are?
20. I just turned 26 in November.
Amazing.
I went to the University of Leeds in the north of England. I didn't apply to a single U.S. school, and I just moved over there as any strong-headed 18-year-old would, and I'm like, this is going to be great. I'm going to do this. And I got over there, and it was a huge culture shock, even though the same language, but it was a very different life. And I quickly got, I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with Leeds, but it's a small city, but it's hugely musical. I don't even know if that sentence makes sense. You know, there are bands that come in and out of Leeds, and the dance music scene there is huge. Some of the longest running UK dance nights are still going in Leeds, like Back to Basics. And I got into dance music because I was a rock kid and an indie kid, and I loved slowly hearing like the Boys Noise remix of Block Party's Banquet, and I was getting more and more involved with like the electro sound and the stuff that Ed Banger was putting up until it just completely took over everything I loved to do. And while I was at school, I worked at the student radio station, LSR, Lead Student Radio, and then I also worked at the local pirate drum and bass radio station, Radio Frequency.
Drum and bass.
Out here. And pirate radio is pretty gangsta in the sense that they literally will run to the top of the buildings to put up the signals, and then the police will start searching like surveillance TV. I wasn't doing that, but I was, you know, more on the actual on-air portion. And then I got the opportunity after I got I stayed and got my master's, and then I got the opportunity to come work for the head of Premiere's entertainment programming, Jen Leingruber, who continues to be an inspiration and mentor to me. When I started, she said, well, what are you into? Like, let's help cultivate whatever you're into. And I was like, I love dance music. And she was like, I've worked at Clear Channel 20 years, and we've never done anything with dance music. But if something comes up, like, I'll help you work to that. And, you know, lo and behold, it was all of a sudden all this stuff started coming up, and, you know, she, true to her word and still to this day, you know, really helps push and really get a lot of this underground dance music kind of within Clear Channel, which shouldn't really not, you know, have anything to do creatively with dance music. I would say as well that our CEO, Bob Pittman, is a huge dance music fan. You know, a lot of what we do has come out of his passion for the genre, which is really helped us expand and do all the things that we're doing and will continue to do.
For those that don't know Bob, he's a genius.
Yes, he founded MTV.
Yeah, and after MTV, he became the CEO of Time Warner and AOL. Following that, Six Flags, 21st Century Real Estate, and now is an partial owner and also the CEO of Clear Channel. So, Adéllyn, you mentioned your mentor, Jen. You built a great relationship with Jen, who's become a friend to you, but is also your boss. So were you in the right place at the right time, or was it also that you really had to fight for it, and do you feel like even today you continue to have to fight for dance music's role within the Clear Channel family?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of, you get given this opportunity and it's what you make of it, right? So if you can't sit back, especially at a company like Clear Channel, you have to take the initiative to actually make it happen. And if you don't, then they're like, oh, well, they couldn't make their idea happen. So you're on your own. I mean, that's the one of the funniest things I hear is when people say, we want to come meet everyone at Evolution, the whole team. And I was like, all four of us? It's a small but mighty, it's a complete labor of love. It has been from the beginning and will continue to be. And it's a lot of work and fighting forward, because there are still people who don't really get it, and there will always be those who, kind of fear what they don't understand. But it's really believing in yourself and believing that it has to be a labor of love, or else I don't know if I'd be working all these hours.
So one more question for me before we go to questions from our audience. In order to ask Adéllyn a question, all you have to do is tweet the hashtag 20something_live. It'll be picked up by my team and handed to me, where I can select which ones to ask. But you mentioned there was just the four of you over at Evolution, but it's much more than the four, because you have access to 850 terrestrial radio stations across the country. But you also have been a part of the forging of some really incredible partnerships, one of which is currently going on with SFX.
Yes.
SFX is run by some good friends of mine, but at the same time, there's always this tendency to think, wow, big business is bad for our genre, because big business can control it in a sense and impact it in a variety of ways, many of which can be good because it can bring obviously a much bigger audience to be attentive to what's going on, but at the same time, there's obviously some negatives with that as well. So let's talk about those negatives for a second. With Clear Channel and SFX, those type of companies' involvement, how do we as dance music enthusiasts keep our integrity, and how do we keep the genre growing in the way it has without losing what we stand for at the core?
Yeah, I think the important thing is realizing the whole scope of any music genre. I mean, you get that with rock and roll, and the purists who are really down with, real underground and that sound, and small raves and intimate settings, that will never die. The underground must always preserve the lifeblood of what we're doing. With our partnership with SFX, especially with it being Clear Channel, we're targeting the mainstream dance music audience. So what we want to do is bring what a lot of people have worked very hard for in this business to a larger group of people, and to continue to build its credibility. I often liken what's happening in dance music right now to hip-hop in the 80s, and how that grew and spawned off from where
Does
it
it
was.
kill it, though? When you think of hip-hop, we think of rap right now, right? I mean, a lot of these, not all of them, there's obviously still the greats, but some of these songs that play on rap radio are just really incredible. And it kind of reminds me now of the spinning sound. And that's nothing against spinning records. They're obviously incredible at what they do, but when you see that Beatport Top 10, and I can't tell the difference between one of the 10 songs, is that artists that are trying so hard to make it to the mainstream that they wind up sounding the same? And what's your advice for artists to innovate beyond that?
I mean, honestly, I think, you hear a lot, this term oversaturation gets thrown around a lot about music, and yes, there is a lot of that, that progressive house, big festival anthem sounding songs, but for me, it's harder to make a good track like that right now because there are so many, and they all, to your point, sound the same. What's exciting for me is that their competition is so high, and so much music is getting made right now. For a song to be great, it really has to rise above this mainstream pack, and you see that with a lot of songs. And I actually add more, of the Gorgon Cities of the world than I do, some of the other artists because
no need to call anybody.
I'm not gonna. I get tons of emails, but for me, that's the exciting part, and I'm really excited about the opportunity that we're gonna have with our partnership with SFX. I think working with Beatport has been really exciting for me too. Those guys are brilliant and very detailed oriented, which I am learning to be, and I think that it's going to expose the Beatport brand to a new audience, and it's going to expose Clear Channel and our dance music initiatives to a new audience as well.
Amazing. So our friend Brandon Coppell wants to know, an article came out putting iHeartRadio as #2 in U.S. music streaming. How big of an influence does dance music have on this?
I think our Q numbers tend to be some of the biggest every month, which doesn't surprise me because I know how passionate dance music listeners are, but to people who don't get dance music within my company, they're like, oh my God, Evolution #1 this month. And I'm like, of course. So I think that it's important to show that curated content is still something that's passionate to dance music fans specifically. Like they tune into Diplo's show because they want to know what he's playing out and what he wants to talk about, and they'll sit there for the full hour and listen to the entire show. As where if you have a casual music listener, they'll tune in and tune out. As where I find that the dedicated dance audiences will listen to the duration of the programming.
Amazing, and we'll go with one more fan question for Daylen. At Richter101 wants to know any future EDM departments projects opening with Clear Channel. And I guess really what I'd like to hear from you based on that is just speak to the future. What's next for Clear Channel's involvement? Are we going to see more dance songs on the radio, less dance songs on the radio, or the same amount of dance songs on the radio?
I think we're going to hear more dance songs on the radio. I think you're going to start to see more dance music radio shows on mainstream traditional radio stations like a Z100 or a KISS, as well as alternative. We syndicate Diplo's show to alternative rock. I mean, that's the cool thing about dance music is it can go into multiple formats, right? So you can have it on the hip-hop stations and the alternative rock stations and Latin stations, which you can't really do with block programming in a lot of other genres because the music is so specific. I think you'll see, obviously, watch this space for further information about what the SFX deal is going to unfold. I'm pretty excited about it. And, look to things that Pete and I are doing in terms of live events and exciting initiatives there. And, look forward to breaking more of your heroes within dance music to a bigger audience. I think there's a real opportunity. I mean, Disclosure right now is busting open CHR Top 40 Radio, which is awesome in my mind. So I think that's the future. Only more things. It's going to evolve.
Daylen, thanks so much for joining us. You've been a great friend.
Thank you, Jake. You
have some amazing mentors, but thank you for being a mentor to everybody watching because I just learned a lot. I know everybody else did too. So thank you. I hope to see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye. Thanks, Jake.
Cool, guys. And before we get to our next guest, last time I saved it until the end of the episode, but I feel the need to discuss it now. I want to mention our song of the week. Not every week it'll be from one of our very own, but I feel so blessed to have this artist as a part of the Third Brain family. He goes by the name of Zhu, Z-H-U, and I hope that some of you watching have already heard his track Faded, but if you haven't, it came out this past Sunday and is sweeping the internet waves, so please go check out Zhu's Faded. All right, on to our next guest, who hopefully is not dealing with any more technical difficulties from down there at South by Southwest. Senthil, we got you, my brother.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yes. I was crossing my fingers. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that earlier, guys.
Is that a Verizon billboard behind you?
Funny part is I do have Verizon.
Okay, were they a part of this?
No, they are not a sponsor yet.
Okay. Cool. Senthil, thanks for joining us. I know how busy you are down there at South by. I want to start with Dancing Astronaut being one of the most respected and reputable brands in dance music. How did it start? How did you know you wanted to start a blog? And I know it's still a blog, but how have you taken it to become this voice for our genre?
Yeah, when I first started Dancing Astronaut with two of my close buddies, we didn't have any sort of business-oriented goals with it. It was kind of three guys that loved dance music that wanted to write about it. And initially, when we started, it was more or less, okay, we're going to post our favorite song of the day and kind of just do it as a way for our own friends to see what we were listening to.
And what year was that?
That was July of 2009. And as you can see just by me describing it, we weren't really taking it extremely seriously. I was in grad school at the time, and we were kind of just, having fun with whatever it was going to turn into. Then about a year into it, so fast forward to summer 2010, we started to develop a pretty loyal fan base, even though there wasn't a ton of effort being put behind it. And once we saw that, we were like, oh, we actually have a readership. What if we actually built out into, news and posting more than just, one or two tracks a day and getting really into the nitty-gritty of what the industry is about. And really in 2011, we started to see huge results. And, along the way, we had different ideas on how we wanted to, portray content and what sort of editorials we wanted to get into and how, the product was going to be built out. And, recently, fast forward to 2014, January, we, recently launched our new webpage, which has gone over pretty well. And so moving from that chronologically schemed blog format, we've moved into more or less, a news website format. I think just the look itself has helped us out.
How does that benefit you guys as you build a business? I know a lot of bloggers have trouble finding ways to make money beyond some measly advertisements here and there. How do you guys go about turning Dancing Astronaut into a legitimate business? Is it a legitimate business yet, in legitimate speaking in terms of profits? And what do you guys do to continue to open the door into ancillary revenue streams?
Right. Initially, when we were starting, we were just using what most bloggers use, the BPM network, just really easy ad networks, start to generate small amounts of revenue. And as we started to build out the brand, and really that's an important distinction to make, right? If your brand's strong, then you'll be able to grow it faster than just any sort of organic growth with regular traffic. And most bloggers will know that there's only so much you can do. It takes time to build a fan base, regardless of how good your content is. And really in 2011, when things started to kick off, we started, direct selling most of our inventory. And that's how most websites make their money, digital advertising. And, we built out a sales team, and we have two guys predominantly who handle sales, Fred and Kevin, if you're watching, hello, that are, awesome, that do it, now full-time for us, but used to do it full-time for various other companies that really understood, what it takes to actually get, U.S. inventory, global inventory sold. And once we started doing that, we developed partnerships within the dance music industry. And with all the big kind of corporations and sponsorships going on, we've kind of moved along to, not only, festivals and labels and all of that stuff, but we've moved on to, the Bud Lights and the big players and sort of advertising in general, not just dance oriented.
Cool. You mentioned Fred and Kevin. I'm friends with obviously a lot of different bloggers and the people that write for them. And something that's unique about Dancing Astronaut is the personal relationship I have with so many people on your team. How did you guys cultivate that family? I think for a lot of people that are watching, they're interested in either joining a team or starting their own team. And as you come up as an entrepreneur, it can be so difficult to find the right team members. How did the Dancing Astronaut team get so big so quickly? And how did you find the right people to join it?
Yeah, part of it is luck with timing. So we started in 2009. About 2010, 2011, we had basically every PR company, every manager hitting us up. And that was right before, it was right when the wave was starting, but it was still early enough where it hadn't completely launched into like this huge juggernaut / cultural change that it is now. So one of that was just luck with when we started. Number two is, and you know, this is kind of like how we run our company culture is, you know, you got to act as if. So everyone that's on the Dancing Astronaut team really, you know, before it was even a full-time job, really put their heart and soul into it and showed everyone that we were taking it seriously. You know, when you hear the term blog, you know, most people relate it to something part-time that's a hobby, and you know, if you're not going to take your business or what you're doing seriously, then it's hard for other people to reciprocate that.
That makes sense. So why Dancing Astronaut? Why that name? How did that brand start?
You know, I got to give credit to my good friend Kevin Kaiser. We were hanging out one day after we traveled the professional circuit, and we were hanging out one day after a practice session, and we were trying to brainstorm names of what we were going to call this new idea. And in kind of 5 minutes, Kevin made a astronaut face and painted it pink in Microsoft Paint. That's literally how easy it was. And once we started looking at it, we were like, it's kind of weird. You know, where are we going to go from there? And then we were like, hey, you know, dance music, dancing, it's an astronaut. Let's stick around with it. And you know, even at first, you know, it kind of straddles that fine line between corny and cool. And then it kind of just stuck. I think it resonated really well with, you know, industry and everyone who visits the site. It's something that's, you know, noticeable and catchy. We also knew even back then we wanted to stay away from sort of any sort of acronyms, so like EDM or anything like that, just because if, you know, that loses its steam, then, you know, it kind of affects brand value there.
So you guys just launched, as you alluded to, your new web platform, which is really mind-blowing because nobody had taken their blog prior and made it into a news destination. It was obviously a big step forward for Dancing Astronaut. What's the next big step forward for your guys' brand? Is there anything unexpected coming that is really going to take it one step even further?
Yeah, you know, a couple things that we have in tow are, and you'll hear this term a lot, not just in blogging or not just in editorial, but a lot of people are getting more data focused, especially in music. And you know, the big question is how do you collect data, and what sort of data will be useful for tracking various, you know, anything like, you know, for example, let's say Cruella launches their next track, we throw it up on Dancing Astronaut, and you experience a spike in readership in Seattle. How do you record that data? How do you use it? How do you portray it? And that's sort of the next step. So as we move forward, you know, we call this new launch Dancing Astronaut 3.0, but really there's going to be a 3.1 and a 3.2, and we're going to introduce artist pages. And
what's the value in that for me? I was on the phone the other day with the CEO of Next Big Sound. They were showing me all this amazing data that they're able to retrieve, and it's, don't get me wrong, it's very impressive, and the platform they built is incredible to collect that data. But as a manager, or if an artist is out there watching this, what can they do with it?
Yeah, so I mean, you're a great example, right? So think about dancingastronaut.com/Cruella. You know, you've got your song kicks, your bands and towns that can, you know, give the world the knowledge of knowing where Cruella is going to play every day, right? It's easy, it's accessible. You can access it through Facebook. You know, you can you know, read content on Dancing Astronaut. You can visit Facebook and Twitter to check out, you know, their social profiles. But is there a one-stop shop to get that all in one click? And, you know, how do you get the data from all that in one spot as well? And, you know, what's useful is you'll be able to track with our artist pages, and we're actually teaming up with a new company called Vidium to actually help us with all the data collection. You'll be able to track, you know, where Cruella's newest track is being viewed the most from dancingastronaut.com. So for example, let's say
what
Cruella,
do I do? Yeah, what's next?
Right. So let's say you have a show in Orlando, And the track's doing reasonably well in Orlando, but you see on the Dancing Astronaut back end that in Seattle, it's just popping off. A lot of viewers, a lot of eyeballs, and a lot of interactions are coming from the Pacific Northwest. So then maybe you're building a bigger fan base with one of your artists over there, and you want to quickly do a show or some sort of marketing experiment to hit that target demographic, right? And the stuff that we'll be able to tell you is the age of people that are viewing and interacting with your various bands or artists. You'll also be able to tell like what sort of cultural demographic they come back along, and so where to actually target. And it's target marketing is better than general marketing, and that's kind of where music marketing is going and taking the next step. I think generally music lags slightly behind the tech world in sort of marketing in general, but I feel with the new sort of companies that are emerging, we'll be able to catch up in a short period of time.
They definitely do, because there's less revenue coming into our industry, and with less revenue in the music industry being made, all the people developing some of the greatest tech solutions, the most creative people in our world, they're not really that attracted to music, and it definitely has put us several steps behind. And if you even think about it, the people that run the music industry are tech companies, Apple and iTunes, and finding ways that record labels couldn't really think of to take it that step forward. But I think for a lot of people out there, there's this tendency now with shows like Shark Tank to really want to be entrepreneurs. We all know that. And when you were a kid and you grew up and, maybe you and I, we wanted to be athletes or potentially something else. I know at the age of 13, I started my own business for the first time and immediately fell in love with entrepreneurship. Now, everybody that comes on the show is entrepreneurial, but not everybody owns their own business. And I think it's important for people to understand the distinction and to know that the opportunity is out there to run your own business. So did you always know that you were going to be an entrepreneur, and what are some of the benefits that you get to enjoy by running your own business?
Right. Unlike you, I didn't always know that I was going to be an entrepreneur. While Dancing Astronaut was building, while we were building Dancing Astronaut, I was actually working in corporate finance. So I was in a cube crunching numbers every day, the standard 8 to 5 kind of ordeal. And once the Dancing Astronaut started to grow and I saw potential in it, I made that transition pretty quickly because there's numerous benefits of becoming an entrepreneur. Is you're developing something that you love, right? And so that's the number one thing. Like anything that I do for Dancing Astronaut never seems like work, so it's easier to work. That wasn't quite so easy while I was working for somebody else and maybe working on something that wasn't necessarily a passion of mine. Secondly, you've got a ton of flexibility. You can take the business in different avenues. You can explore different ideas, something that working for a big corporate machine may not allow you to do. And those are the two biggest differences in what I've experienced in my life change recently.
Very cool. So at Sandra Mito out there wants to know any advice for an electronic music website that has recently launched.
Yeah, two things, and these are coming from mistakes that I've made earlier on. Is you can't do it by yourself, so you're going to have to build a team around you that's number one, loyal, and number two, good at executing. Kind of how I look at it is there's a ton of people with great ideas out there, but an average idea that's executed properly is better than a good idea that's never executed upon. And so you need those guys that can go out there and actually execute what you want to do. There's talking only goes so far. And one other thing, and this is going to be kind of harsh, but it's also something I learned the hard way, was you got to be as good at firing as you are at hiring. And the reason why I say that is everyone knows that hiring good people and goal-oriented individuals is what runs a company. That's pretty obvious. The firing part isn't as obvious, especially when you're running kind of a small, friendly sort of team environment. And sometimes you get a few bad apples and a few road bumps along the way, and since you have a personal relationship with those people, you kind of let it run its course. I would advise, highly looking at the various situations if that does occur, and kind of, blocking that out completely, because that can ruin kind of the flow of the company as you progress further.
Very valuable advice. I have at the bottom of my email, every single one I send, in my signature, ideas are only worth a dime a dozen, but it's those who put them into practice that are priceless. And you, Sir Senthil, are certainly one of them. Any big plans for South by while you're down there?
I'm speaking on a panel at 2 p.m., the Eventbrite panel, and it's about, the new EDM fan, and that's also a data-oriented discussion, go figure. And, we're going to be talking about how, why the EDM fan interacts on social networks so aggressively, why that is, who is the EDM fan, and kind of talking about the growth potential for the industry in general moving forward. So that's going to be kind of cool. And, Tiesto's coming into town too, so that's always a fun time.
Well, thanks for growing it while the rest of us do our part. Thank you so much for joining us, Senthil. I appreciate it, and enjoy your time at South by Southwest. Cool, guys. So as we go into our next speaker, I need to give a little bit of an anecdote on his story, because hearing it from him would just not be the same. My friend Tom Smith, a couple years ago, was involved in a very serious hockey accident where he actually broke his back and was paralyzed, told he was never going to walk again. A few months later, despite all odds, Tom was walking again. But what's even more miraculous is that a few months later, he was back on the ice preparing for his career as a potential NHL superstar. Well, in his third game back, unfortunately, Tom had another accident in a different place on his back and was air rushed to the Miami Project down in Miami, where he was told that the chance of this having happened was worse than winning the lottery 5 times in a row. So when you're paralyzed multiple times and you're told you're never going to walk again for the second time, what do you do? For many people out there, they may stay in bed, refuse treatment, they may go to treatment. But what are the chances that 1 year later that they would be back walking? And not only walking, but potentially changing the game forever, making sure that other players could play safer, and preparing for a bike ride across the country? Is this guy crazy? I sure think he is, and I know that you will too. So let's bring him in, my good friend Tom Smith.
How are you, Jake?
What's up, buddy?
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the great introduction.
No wheelchair.
No wheelchair. I got my my lost strain canes, but I'm confident that hopefully someday in the near future those are going to be gone as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I was with you all weekend and seeing you on those. What's the timetable for that? And are you able to complete the bike ride while still being on the canes?
Yes. So the timetable for the lost strands, it's kind of right now. My break is healed. My first injury was, I guess I'll just start from there and kind of walk people through that, and then how we got to this point. So my first accident, I dislocated sublux dislocations to C1, C2, C5, and C6, and was also diagnosed with being internally decapitated. So sublux dislocations and internal decapitation means everything's was shifted over. A lot of that and my troubles walking had to do with everything being shifted, so the messages being sent from my head to different parts of my body and my extremities, me telling myself, okay, I'm going to try and walk again. This second accident, I actually chipped a piece of bone off of T3. So that vertebra is stabilized and has been stabilized for 4 years now. It only took a few months for the break to heal. It's the actual swelling in the back that is drowning the nerves, and that the nerves are under. So, I'm a perfect candidate for what they're doing with the stem cell and Schwann cell research. And, that's going to give me the best chance of walking because it's the regrowing of nerves. So in terms of a timetable, it's hard to say, but I do aquatic therapy 5 days a week. I'm still busting my butt. at therapy, and you know, I'm hopeful that with a couple other the events that we're doing through muscle memory, maybe something will come back.
Tom, I'm obviously incredibly respectful of your injury and really admire all that you've gone through to get yourself back in shape. But I wanted to have you on this show so you could fill everybody in about your entrepreneurial foundation. You obviously have partnered with Corella to do something for one of the divisions of your organization by the name of Dance for Paralysis. But this weekend, you got to fill me in a little bit more about the lookup line, which I thought was really interesting because sports games are an American tradition. And there's very few people that ever come along and really change the rules of the game. And as you mentioned to me in the car, the lookup line is one of 2 rule changes being proposed by USA Hockey. Is that true? And can you tell everybody a little bit about the lookup line and what you see for the future of it?
Sure. So when we founded our foundation, you know, I had to figure out my life without hockey. You know, how was I going to be a productive member of society? And, you know, our foundation, how it was built, I was 6 days after my accident. I'm in my hospital bed. And, you know, I had just basically told the doctor who came in, who was telling me to stop goofing off at therapy and take this seriously, to basically go F himself. And, you know, he didn't know what I was going through. And, you know, who are you to tell me?
How could anybody?
You know, all of this. And I was taking the frustration on me, and I was like, poor Tom, poor Tom, poor Tom, not going to have a future after hockey, all this stuff. And 10 minutes later, I'm in my bed, and I look out into the hallway, and there's a little boy going by in a wheelchair, controlling it by his tongue. And I was kind of taken aback, like, what the heck is going on? So I got in my wheelchair and went in the hallway, and as I was rounding the corner, his father was picking up his arms to hug his mother. And I went back into my room, and I cried like a baby for 2 hours. And that was really the turning point in my life, and this is my lead into how we built these divisions, because we've built a foundation on what we're calling our 3 different F words, instead of, you know, the FU, that word, our 3 new F words, which we build our foundation around, which I think is applicable to a for-profit and a non-profit company, which is faith, family, and friends. That's who we surround ourselves with. That's the type of people who we, you know, do business with that have, you know, not necessarily religious faith, but just, you know, believe in good karma, good people, have good friends, have good family, all that stuff. And then the other 3 things that we did, because after I first got hurt, I was quitting. I was quitting on myself. I was quitting on everyone. You know, why me? I said, you're never going to ask that question again. You're going to do 3 other things, and this is how you're going to execute with everything that you do. And it's don't whine, don't complain, and don't quit. So once we built the foundation, I've been an entrepreneur. Like you, I started my own business when I was younger. I had a landscaping business when I was 14, and then carried that into going snowplowing. So I've had that entrepreneurial mindset, but, you know, I couldn't do that in a wheelchair in the fashion that I wanted to. So I decided to create a philanthropic entrepreneurial foundation to take a 2-prong approach with a universal approach to getting the message of paralysis out there. So it's very important to me to take a preventative approach to tackling paralysis. So 2 years ago, we were working on an idea to cushion the boards in hockey, and we weren't getting anywhere. When we shot the puck against the different foams and springs that we were using, the puck was actually dying. So we took a step back, and I was watching a Red Sox game in the August of 2012. And the outfielder's running back for a fly ball, and it's the 8th inning. And as he's doing so, his cleats went across the warning track, or the gravel, which is the warning track. And he put his arm out, and he slowed down. And I said, oh, my goodness, a warning track. So I went on the computer, and I said to myself, okay, what have all sports done to make their game safer and allowing players to know where they are in space before they make contact with a solid object when they go out of bounds? So football. In 1974, they moved the goalpost back from the goal line to the end of the end zone. Players, coaches, and media are supposed to stand 5 yards back from the perimeter line. They have a rectangular box where the players, coaches, and media are supposed to stand behind. Basketball, same type of deal. Players, coaches, and media are supposed to sit, and fans are supposed to sit 3 to 5 feet back from the perimeter line. In '82, they moved the post back about 4 feet and went to an L-shaped form. So the post is back 4 feet. Now the rim hangs roughly about 14 inches over the perimeter line. Baseball has their warning track, and the kicker for me, like I just told you before, I do aquatic therapy 5 days a week. And the kicker for me was I'm looking down in the lane in each pool, and there's a black line at the bottom of each pool. So I'm saying to myself, oh my goodness, and that line stops roughly 6.5 feet before the end wall. And I said, well, if you don't see that line, it's one of two things. One, you're going to be in someone else's lane, so pick your head up because you could hit a swimmer. Or number two, you're near the end wall. Regardless, you could be making contact with a solid object. So hockey, being the fastest, most intense sport, I'm someone who suffered 2 board-related accidents from actually suffering actual compression, which means the head making contact on a straight formula rather than your head being tilted up. So we created what we're calling the lookup line, which is ice hockey's first warning track. Because in hockey, the object we're playing with is on the ice. So inherently, you're gonna get caught with your head down. So we're now at a measuring stick of 40 inches. The line is 40 inches off the boards, and we colored it orange. Why orange? Because we believe orange is a universal caution color, because whether you're driving down the street and you see a police officer wearing an orange vest, or someone working, or an orange parking cone, that usually symbolizes cautions. And there's also no orange markings on the ice. And with the idea, there's no cost to it. Because when you paint an ice sheet, you put down white paint underneath the ice before you put the water on top, and you do all the lines. So what we're telling, rinks and leagues is, look at, when we go to meet with USA Hockey in June to mandate this, when we go to the NHL and the NCAA in July to mandate this, we're saying, look at, do it when you do your annual ice paintings. So if it's a 1-year or 2-year window, I want to be fair with people. I want it to be cost effective, but we're definitely not taking the approach of this is a recommendation. I think that it's needed for the game. Head, neck, and neck injuries are on the rise. And if they do it, when they do their annual ice paintings, if you order 30 gallons of white paint to paint the surface of the ice, now order 23 gallons of white paint, because we know at 40 inches in width going around an NHL rink, it takes 7 gallons of orange paint, 6.5 to 7. So cost-effective idea. There's no denying that the players are getting bigger, stronger, and faster. There's no denying that head and neck injuries on the rise. And what we do know is that the current architectural framework that hockey players play in, it's not working, and something needs to change. And we believe the lookup line is a good preventative solution to helping prevent what's happened to me and Chick Kelly, Travis Roy, Matty Brown, all these other guys. And it needs to stop, and we think we can help make it stop.
Tom, in addition to being an incredible philanthropist and really looking out for others, you're also a great networker. The first time we met, I had zero interest in partnering with you, regardless of how amazing your story was. You've put up with me in all facets, and we've really been able to form this incredible friendship and partnership between us. And it's always really impressed me, your ability to network. You and I had this incredible weekend down in even Utah this past weekend at Summit Series. And likewise there, you were an incredible networker, and you happened to meet somebody special. I don't know if you want to talk about that situation specifically, or another situation where you had to network and really sell yourself in a way that could lead to the accomplishment of your goals, of course in a way that's always mutually beneficial.
Well, I'd like to, because I actually today just signed a confidentiality with that minority owner.
Okay.
with a professional team. So, but I'd like to talk about persistency and networking. So with our foundation, it was to create a platform with the preventative approach and the proactive approach and the universal language approach, which we have the Dance for Paralysis division. And like you said, when I approached you, it's not that we didn't have a great conversation. You told me, Tom, I have 40 foundations that are approaching me. We have to choose the right one. I want to talk to the girls. I want to talk to Chris, and I'll get back to you. But what really separated everyone about from you guys from everyone was, I remember that we spoke and you took 40 minutes to sit down and talk to me, and then the girls and Chris got done late from that photo shoot that we were at, and they had to be, it was like 4:45, and they had to be somewhere at 5:15, and they sat down and they listened to me talk for 50 minutes. And then not only did they listen to me to talk, they asked questions after. What can we do? Chris told me about, his family and his experiences with paralysis and all this stuff. So, we did stay persistent, and why it was so important that, networking and me getting introduced to you through our good friend Leanne and Teague and Zach and all that was I believed in what you guys were doing. I believe in who you are when the cameras aren't on and when, you're not on stage. and that really set the example for me. So, you know, my persistency in networking and getting to you.
Yeah, how do you go about turning somebody, though, that might have, in my scenario, having 40 organizations? I've partnered with other organizations in the past, some of which I thought would become Corella's charity of choice, but you turned me. So what's your advice to people that are looking to accomplish something through networking and are having a difficult time getting through, whether it be an artist that interests to a record label or a potential blogger out there interested in becoming a manager or a manager looking for new clients? What are the key skill sets that you need to make some of these partnerships that you've made happen become a reality?
Distinguish yourself. Hands down, that is the number one. How do you distinguish yourself? So like I said, with our foundation, it's a two-prong approach. We have the preventative approach, now our proactive. So EDM music, it's electronic dance music. Dancing. Dance for paralysis. We're dancing for those who can't. We're trying to find a cure so those with paralysis can one day get out of their wheelchairs and join us in a dance. So I believe the EDM industry and the acts that are in EDM, paralysis is extremely appropriate. And that's what you and I talked about in our second and third meeting. I didn't convey that the best. I think I should have, and I talked about the story and everything when we first met, but we have distinguished and we've found a niche within the injury, because paralysis means the loss of bodily movement, and said, okay, let's partner with a genre that's literally defines itself by dance music and make it appropriate, because with the artist, I want them to feel like they're a beacon of hope every time they go on stage, because they have the opportunity to be. You know, Yasmin, Johan, and Chris, these bracelets, the Electric Family Corella Dance for Paralysis bracelets that we're currently selling, the girls and Chris, they wear those on stage. Every time they go on stage, they're a beacon of hope, and they're fighting for those with paralysis. They're standing for those who can't. So you have to distinguish yourself, because, you know, everyone has a goal, everyone has a dream. It's how do you execute and how do you distinguish yourself to get seen? And I believe that, you know, after we had that conversation of, you know, how identifiable and appropriate paralysis was, that was, you know, the beginning to what we formed together.
Yeah, differentiating yourself and persistence are just two amazing qualities that are surely large focuses of my book that, you know, will be coming out next year called 20-something. It really has been those skill sets that I do agree with you have been incredibly influential in forging some of the best relationships I have. So with over 500,000 people suffering from paralysis every year in the United States,
sure,
talk to us about how close we may be to the cure.
You know, this is, I think with a lot of causes, you know, you never want to not provide hope and inspiration, because, you know, like cancer and diabetes, everyone's constantly working to find a cure, and that's no BS. But with paralysis, 2013 was the first year that the government, and specifically the government is given, specifically the Miami Project, was the first hospital to receive FDA approval for human clinical trials. So that means that they were successful and completely severing a cord, and they were experimenting with monkeys.
Now, is that for only people who were just recently injured, or no, that's for people that have been injured for years or born with it?
To start. 2013 was the first year for human clinical trial approval. So you know, they get that with severing the cord of the closest thing to a human, which they believe, with the functionality of everything, is monkeys, and then rejuvenating that. So how they got the approval was they completely, you know, did surgery on a monkey, completely severed its spinal cord. Within 30 hours, they had the monkey running, jumping, bowel movement, everything the same as before they did that. So they knew they had to get someone and perform the surgery, and to answer your question, the surgery and the procedure within 30 hours of the accident to get the most out of what they're doing now. And then hopefully as things get curated and the success continues to grow, you know, the October 1st, 2009, I'll be 5 years out. And like we spoke about before, it's getting the nerves back. But right now, I'm not a candidate for that, because they have to perfect someone who was most recently injured, and because that's what they have the proof with the trials, with the monkeys and all of that, to get going. So it's really important right now for us to engage the public in what's going on, and, you know, differentiating yourselves. What we believe is to do is create fun philanthropic events. And paralysis, no matter how you put it, is sad. But, you know, when you position it like something like Dance for Paralysis or the Reality Ride Challenge, the bike ride, it takes that somber moment out of it for a sec, where you're literally providing hope for people, and it makes it a little better. And now's the time where we do need the funds, and we do need the awareness, and we're creating that in our partnership and a couple other things that we're doing. So it's very appropriate right now for a lot of eyes to be on the FDA and the Miami project and places like the Shepherd Center to know what's going on with paralysis, because I do want to add that in finding a cure for paralysis, so the Miami's set up with a couple of different hospitals around it. They have the diabetic clinic, the cancer, the eye and ear, and the paralysis. And one of the doctors down there, Dr. Barth Green, who co-founded the facility, was explaining to me, he said, Tom, if we can rewire someone's body, what's to say we can't regulate sugar levels in diabetes? And cure some of the cancers that we're going to be experimenting with in finding the cure for paralysis. So paralysis is kind of like the ultimate goal, because it is tough to rewire someone's body. So there's going to be a lot of other things, ALS, MS, that are going to have the cure found in the process of finding a cure for paralysis. So I think when people look at paralysis, we're also tying in, you could say inadvertently, I say vertently, because you want to find a cure for everything. The cures to other things, and Miami really has a very special facility down there. And you've been in the meetings with me with the directors and talked about with them about what they're doing. So that's why we're so heavily involved with them, and we believe that it's definitely in the future, but if we can help it, it's not going to be in the distant future. We are going to find a cure for this thing sooner rather than later.
So as a 20-something, Tom, we always have to plan for the future. But the bottom line is that most of the events that change our lives and are life-altering are many times beyond our control.
Sure.
Hockey was your one true passion, without a doubt. Now, in your work for paralysis with your foundation, have you been able to tap into that same level of passion? Are you more passionate, less passionate, or is it about the same as what you were doing with hockey?
Absolutely. It's tough for me to say that I'm happy the injury happened, because I'm not. But believe it or not, the injuries made me a better person. And it's made me a better person because when I was in high school, my mother runs one of the biggest breast cancer walks in Salem, Massachusetts, and I was the guy, I was the son who would skip the walk and go play street hockey. I was the kid who was late for class because I was skating with my homies at the rink before and was an hour and a half late for school. I didn't appreciate everything in life. Like, I thought my sole purpose to be on this planet was to put the puck in the back of a net. So when hockey came fairly easy to me, I was gifted with speed. I wasn't much of a finesse guy. So when I was knocked down and had to get back up, and I didn't have that natural gift that I was relying on, like, I was a good student, I wasn't a great student, but because of hockey, I got into a prep school. Hockey opened a lot of doors. So I was really at a crossroads, and it made me appreciate, just being able to get up and give my mom, a kiss on the cheek, or shake my dad's hand, or something like that. And now when you're faced with adversity, and I do hospital visits once a month, and I see what families go through, and I'm interacting with them, and the relationships, like our foundation, the relationships that we build from day one, we haven't not kept in contact with one of our grant recipients or one person that we've met from the beginning, more than 2 or 3 times that we've met with. We have not disconnected with one person. So I've learned a lot about relationships and really what it means, because I'm writing a book as well, as you know, and I talk about in there the injury, obviously, but how it's changed me, and you need to pour everything into it. And for me, before, I wanted to be a hockey player and make $2 million. Now, if I made $2 million, I donate 1.95 of that and take as little as I could to live, because I want to find a cure for something so bad. So getting back, am I more passionate? I think I might be, because I lost everything from the beginning. And I showed you the cane before. I'm back walking with lost strands. With hockey, I had everything. So now that I've lost it and I'm trying to regain it, and yes, I'm fortunate because I'm walking with off-strand canes, and you know, the last time I used my wheelchair was in 2012, but I still have a long road to go. But getting phone calls from, you know, good friends of mine saying, you know, Tom, what's going on? When are we going to find that chair? You know, my girlfriend left me, or all this stuff. People that have paralysis, it makes me angry. And when I'm angry and I'm fighting for something, and that's fighting for a cure for paralysis, I will pour every single ounce of my energy into this. Like in my book, I often talk about, you know, 401ks. How am I going to tell you? I know my dad thinks I'm crazy, but like, how am I going to tell you I'm pouring everything into this if I'm putting money aside for retiring in the future? There's no retiring from this until every single person is out of a wheelchair. I am going to keep going. I am going to keep driving. We're going to keep raising money. We're going to keep, you know, pushing Look Up Blind Dance for Paralysis, the Reality Ride Challenge, until we have a cure for every single person. And you know, I hate getting those phone calls. I hate seeing the tears on people's faces, and what happens when paralysis hits someone, because you got to think.
Tom, has paralysis made your friendships, and I know you recently rekindled a high school relationship, but has those has paralysis made your relationships in general, your friendships, deeper?
That's an interesting question. You might think my good friends, yes. But I've lost a lot of friends because of paralysis. Because paralysis, it just doesn't affect one person. You got to think, you know, when you're paralyzed waist down, like I was, so I could still use my arms, I would disconnect the wheelchair and then have to have someone bring it around the car, put it on the seat beside me, but I would still need help. Neck down, you need help on a daily basis. You need an aid. So paralysis, it's the debilitating physicality of one person, but it affects a multitude of people. So my, you know, fair weather friends and my acquaintances, I did lose some of them because, you know, they were just focused on, you know, Tom the hockey player and who his connections were and all of that. And when I didn't have that anymore and all I had was me, I really found out who my true friends were. But my core group, absolutely, we've stayed close. And it's also, you know, with the core group, it's opened up a lot of opportunities. Like, you know, we've met, we have a great platform with Dance for Paralysis. So, like I said, not that I wished the injury had happened, but I found out a lot about myself. I found out who really cared about me, and you know, I'm comfortable with the mission that we're embarking on outside of being a hockey player.
Amazing. You mentioned grant recipients earlier, and speaking of grant recipients, that's one of the things for everybody out there that I became so intrigued by Tom's charitable mission, was to take the money that we raised, find the exact person that could most benefit from those funds. And we started our mission simply by selling electric family bracelets, which Tom can hold up for you, and are available for sale in the Corella store at corellastore.com. So we actually negotiated a deal with the company to make sure that all of your funds will indeed go to the mission at hand, and we will be actually recording where your money goes, so you can see that for yourself. Tom, every disease or disability needs an incredible spokesperson to bring the issues to light and to do everything that we can to prevent it. So as far as on behalf of paralysis, I know that it's on its way to a cure, and I'm so grateful to have you as a friend on this show and for being that spokesperson, because I think a few years from now, everybody in the United States and hopefully around the world will know your story, and you've been an inspiration to me, and I'm sure will be to many as well. So thank you for joining us here on 20 Something Live.
Jake, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Guys, as we wrap up here, as we always do, we have a book of the week. One of entertainment's true greats. Am I holding that up right? Yes, I am. Jerry Weintraub, one of the greatest music managers of all time, and also the man behind the Ocean's 11 series. Be sure to check out When I Stop Talking, You'll Know I'm Dead. I promise you will enjoy every second of it. On behalf of Senthil, Adéllyn, Tom, and myself, thank you guys so much for joining us in episode 2. I will see you next week.